All right. Good morning, everyone. Today's topic is a little different, talking about contracting in team coaching. So, some of the obvious question comes in: what is team coaching, and then what does contracting? And contracting is one of the stages, one of the initial stages in any team coaching intervention. So, we're gonna just focus on that. So, before that, we basically like to understand how much understanding is already present in this room, and then would like to channelize that through the conversation. And we intend to keep this conversation conversational, and it'll be great if you can share your experiences and share what you think about it, what are your questions, and then we weave everything into that. Is that okay? Do we have this contract in place? Okay, awesome.
Yes. Jehan, how smartly you've played with the contractor.
Played.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't really played anything. I just set the context and contracted
Yes.
with all of you. Awesome.
Yes.
Great. Sandeep,
Awesome.
over to you.
Okay, so let's for a minute, as Jaya was saying, let's start by, talking about what do we believe contracting is. So what does everybody in the room, so I'm going a bit with the assumption that everybody understands what team coaching is, right? Or if you think we need to spend some time there, we can spend a few minutes discussing team coaching. Any
I think just Sandeep, just a one-liner in terms of how everybody looks at it, because that just gets us on a common platform, though I'm sure all of us understand in our own ways.
Okay. So would somebody like to take a lead? Just one or two thoughts. What is team coaching?
Okay, I could try. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So the way I look at team coaching, and when I will share this, it's in contrast to what we do in one-to-one coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're working with a team, which is a direct team, and they are working on a common goal or an objective is what the team is working towards. And that's what we do largely in team coaching. So it could be, a dysfunction, it could be something which is an issue which the team wants to get better at. And you're working collectively with the whole team to kind of, establish the objective with the stakeholders and come to a whatever enhanced performance or whatever the key objective in the engagement is.
Yeah.
At a very simple, broad level.
Yes. Yeah, Venkat.
So slightly variance to what Archana just said. So my understanding is very rudimentary on team coaching. But I would like to know what's the difference between kind of team coaching where basically you have a goal which is very clear and people are working towards it because their entire performance depends on it, vis-a-vis a leadership team where, let's say, there are 4 SBU heads. Each SBU head is running a separate P&L and they're all reporting to the CEO. So they call it leadership team, but the definition of the team is slightly different there.
Yes.
Where they basically look at the overall top line, bottom line, and they may have some shared vision and credo, etc. But they will not have so much interdependency between themselves. So I'd like to understand whether, because those are all the areas whether this concept is applicable and how do we go about it. So is it a group coaching? How is it different?
Yeah. So anybody else wants to add to anything? Otherwise, we can just take the conversation forward from here. Okay. So, one to the point which Archana made, and I think it's a very valid point, team coaching, one of the distinct things of team coaching, and that's how also Venkat, it is different from group coaching, is that you treat the entire team as one single entity. So which means that you're not going to be individually coaching various team members, you're going to be coaching the team collectively. While there are different models available, different people work in different ways, but essentially team coaching is about treating the team as a single entity and then coaching the entire team together. The definition of the team per se is that they have to have something that they are working in common towards. So there has to be a common objective. The team has to be, as the definitions go, it should be something which can be a cohesive set of people, which means 5 to 7 people approximately, complementary kind of skill sets, working towards the same outcome. So the point that you were making is also because at the apex, that indeed is the team. Now, interdependencies is something which every organization has a different view, and every individual has a different view of interdependencies. I would actually like to state that team coaching is an opportunity to create those interdependencies or make people realize about those interdependencies where you are not so conscious of it. So that's really, both of you in your own way have the right thoughts. It's just that we need to distinguish between an individual coaching, team coaching, and group coaching. Individual coaching is where you work with a single person. Team coaching is where you work with the team as a single entity. Group coaching possibly is where you work with a set of people who are not necessarily of the same team, but are working towards the same improvement in behavior, competency, or whatever. Yeah. So over to you, Jaya. What if you would like to share your thoughts on this?
Yes, so one of the very important things between these three entities is that in team, you coach relationships, you don't coach individuals. You're coaching the relationship, the space between them. So your questions are very different. Your question is not about what can you do. It's about what needs to happen in your relationship for things to change. So you're basically building more trust. You're basically you're basically coaching the environment rather than coaching the individuals. Yeah. In group, the relationship bit is very contextual. At times, the groups are knitted together. However, they're working for the same organizational goal, but then relationship doesn't play that much of a role there. It's about how they can support each other in the same context. So that's a very clear distinction between individual, team, and group.
Can I just seek a clarification? So what Venkat Raman said, let's take a same example, 6 different business leaders having a different portfolio, and now there could be part A and part B. All 6 are reporting to one leader, and across the 6, they could also have a multiple reporting, but the 6 of them are, all 6 could be reporting to one, and 3 out of them are reporting also to another, right? But they are a team. Will we still consider that as a team?
It's not a team, it's a group.
Okay, then it becomes a group the moment it becomes more than one leader. That's how we are looking at it? Okay, that's an interesting one. Okay.
So all the SBU heads form a group and they have their teams. So when a SBU head comes and say, can you help our team work together? Then I'm getting into team coaching. But when I'm coaching the SBU heads, then I'm coaching a group. That's the distinction.
Having said that, there could be one other way to look at it. And that is that if you look at the SBU heads and the leader together, then you could still be looking at a team because they have a common agenda to work for, a company's bottom line, top line, efficiencies. So, none of this is cast in stone. I and Jaya, we conduct these programs, we run team coaching engagements. I can promise you, every team coaching engagement is different from the other. And even sometimes the differences between team and group coaching actually become so, I would say, the lines start blurring. Yeah. Honestly.
In fact, it also depends on what is the context of this conversation, right? If the head of the organization said, coach my team, for that person, the team is these SBO heads. Right. And the goals and the objective and the purpose of the intervention decides the structure.
And that is.
Yes. And it is blurred and it is intermingled and it is complex and it is systemic in nature. So all those, these definitions are just for us to get started and not really put them into boxes by any means.
And honestly, this is where contracting comes in. Because in contracting, is when you will decide what is the team that you're going to coach and whether that team is actually a team or is it a group of people. So that's where contracting is so important. Sanjay, you wanted to make a point, I think. You're on mute. did we?
Yeah, sorry, just one comment related to multi-BUs, the lead teams that are there. My understanding is that the client really decides whether this is a team, which could be at a leadership team level, or comprising of the CEO along with the business heads, along with the function heads, or is it a group of businesses which are coming together, and therefore it could vary. So definition of team and group may perhaps come from the client itself, and which goes into the contracting part of it, versus we trying to define.
Exactly.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what contracting is all about. One of the things, even if we specifically don't call it out, is to understand whether you are actually contracting a team coaching engagement at all, or is it a group coaching engagement? Then also it's good to know right at that point in time, saying this will run like a group coaching engagement.
And don't be surprised if it changes in few conversation, because that clarity nobody has. So, you know, when an organization reaches out, they're reaching out to find a solution to something which is vague. And in the process of defining that, the place that we reach of journey map, a lot of things have changed, right? These are some of the concepts for us to get started and say, okay, let me make sense of this complex system.
May I ask a question at this time?
Yes.
Basically, I just wanted to know, there are two contractings as I see that may happen here. One is the objective contracting. Basically, if the group and the person who's hiring us are different, the person who's hiring us may have some objective in mind. Yeah. Now, when we are discussing with them, I think there is a little level of contracting happening there also to understand exactly what they have in mind. And then when you go to the group to do the coaching, there also there will be a contracting basically to clarify understanding of the people that are there. So,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think most of the models, whether you look at Perel or you look at Peter Hawkins, and that's what we are going to discuss today, look at multiple, ways to contract or multiple times to contract, let's say. So let's, if it's okay, let's get started with the discussion a little bit on specifically around contracting. So what do you, what do people think? What is contracting? Yeah. Any views?
Agreement. It's an agreement wherein there's a common understanding of what is to be done. Basically, okay. It's an agreement on the basis of which we take it further, so that there is clarity at the end of this session or at the end of the coaching period that that particular contract that we have agreed upon has been met or not. So that's the agreement we generate.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And to add to that, you can have also terms of engagement.
Yes.
Like roles and responsibilities of all the stakeholders involved,
Exactly. Exactly. So effectively, contracting is what happens before you actually initiate work with a client on any engagement. So whether it's team coaching or otherwise, that is what you do before you actually start work. And in its most limited sense, it is the legal signing of a contract. A lot of people, when they talk of contract, they talk about it's the legal signing of the agreement, but actually that's a very small part of a contracting piece. More importantly, contracting is an opportunity to understand the context in which this engagement is happening, manage expectations. A lot of times, as we are discussing, people don't understand what is a team coaching engagement. When you sign up for a team coaching engagement, the organization expects that you're going to individually coach various leaders in a team, but that's not what team coaching is about. So this is an opportunity to manage those expectations. It's also an opportunity to seek alignment on targeted outcomes. What are we targeting and how we are going to measure it? So what's going to be the success metrics? What would you how would you know that we've been successful with this engagement 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line? So effectively, I like to draw this metaphor that contracting is the prologue in a drama before the plot plays out. So, a lot of times when you read a play so there is a prologue, which is the story before the story types, all the context in which the story is going to play out. That's really what contracting is. Any views around the room?
Sandeep, is it, sorry.
Yeah, please.
Is it similar to the commissioning in the 5 C's?
Commissioning effectively, so there are two things, commissioning, connecting, co-learning, Peter Hawkins, that is really the what of a high-performing team. So in that, contracting is part of it, but actually we talk more about contracting when the process of team coaching starts. So, the way Peter Hawkins looks at it is that he first defines what's a high-performing team. And there you have these 5 elements. And then he goes about to say that how do you conduct a coaching engagement? And that is where the contracting plays out. But you're right, a big piece of commissioning is going to be contracting. Sorry, why can't I move this? So let's look at Peter Hawkins' model, and Jaya will look at it from the context of Perel's model, which is David Clutterberg's model. Yes, Rohit.
Yeah, morning, Sandeep. Yeah, so my question was that how does contracting work for the internal coach? Because as an internal coach, we join a lot of sessions with teams to find out the goal they are working towards. So obviously, as an internal coach, we do contracting right on the go, right? So in the session, what we want to achieve and how we want to achieve it.
Yeah.
So because the previous slide we had, this contracting was more of when we are external coaches, we're coming in for a certain period to as per the organization wants. But when you're working internally, how does this contracting works then?
I would, at the sake of to some extent disagree with you. I think because internal coaches also need to have certain amount of agreements in terms of what they are working towards. Internal coach is not somebody who's just expected to come and sit in a meeting and watch and make some comments and go away. I think it is important, I think, for the organization and for the internal coach to agree to that these are the few things we are going to work on. Now, for an internal coach, some of these things may not happen because better understanding of the context is not required. Maybe they already have the context. But having said that, I think in the large organizations where the teams are in thousands of people, I don't think every coach has really a deep understanding of the context of each team. So while it may be probably, as not as important, or I won't say important, but as intensive effort as it would be for an external team coach, but internal team coach will also have to understand the context.
Yeah, and I also want to interject there and say, when somebody is saying we need team coaching, what do they really mean by that? Because there has to be a common understanding about the expectations and the outcome. A lot of times, the verbiage is confusing. A business comes and say, I need team coaching for my team, but they may not really understand what it means. And are they referring to facilitation, calling it a team coaching?
Right.
Are they referring to something else and they're calling it team coaching? That is the first contract. And there are layers of contract that comes into these conversations, and it makes sense for every coach to make a note of it, because till the time the understanding is clear that I'm the right person to support here, then everything is vague, and in the case of teams and groups, it continues to become complicated and intermingled and complex. So the first contract is what I understand team coaching and what you understand is same or not. And if it is not, let's understand what's the right solution for you. What exactly are you trying to resolve? What do you want to see, with any kind of intervention that you're looking at? So those are all part of the contract. And the first contract is, do we understand the meaning of contracting or team coaching? Same.
Yeah. And as Jay is saying, I think when in organizations there is an internal coach and working with teams only intermittently and not as a series of interventions, 99% that would more be a facilitation than a coaching. Because then you would just go in for one meeting or whatever, where you would try and kind of help the team open up to new thoughts, collective wisdom, those kind of things, but 99% be more facilitation. I think coaching is something which happens over a series of sessions or interventions. Facilitation could be part of it. It's a big part of it in team coaching, I must say, but it's not all of it.
Cool. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Sorry, one more question. It just came on my mind now.
Sure.
Sorry about this. And like we said, contracting. So we done contracting with a client. The client is basically a sponsored organization.
Yes.
Do we do contracting with teams as well, who we are coaching?
Yes, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you look at Peter,
Sorry. Sandeep, just wanted to respond to Rohit that contracting is not one single process. In any coaching intervention, whether it is one-to-one or group or team or organizational, you are contracting at every stage. So there are several contracts come to paper by end of second or third month, because every conversation is bringing a contract. And then to go back and validate with the sponsor is the final contract. So understand that, because in every conversation, they are sharing expectations of how it should be, what they want, how they don't want, what they do not want in the coach. Everything is a contract. So every conversation is a contract, and following that contract is also a contract. So see it like a layer, see it like an onion in the context of a team and organization. Yes, Sandeep.
Yeah. So, as we've been discussing, there are two parts to contracting, especially in a team coaching engagement. One is contracting one, and the other is contracting two, as Peter Hawkins likes to call it in his Sid Clear model. Effectively, contracting one is what happens before you engage with the team. So that's an important piece. And look at it like, for example, in an individual coaching. It's quite possible that when you sign a coaching engagement, your first level of contracting is happening either with the CHRO, or it's happening with the manager of the person with whom you are going to actually work the coaching engagement. So even in individual coaching, there is an element of contracting which happens before you actually start work with the coaching. And exactly same is the case with team coaching, but it's much more intensive here, because obviously the stakes are higher. Here in the first contracting phase, most of the times the team members are not involved. At best, the team leader could be involved, but chances mostly are that even team leaders sometimes are not involved. Commissioners are involved. Commissioners are the people who commission the team. Okay. Or, for example, the CHRO or the HR fraternity could be involved. And again, the questions that we would basically typically ask if we were contracting for an engagement is that, what is the team stakeholder requiring us to, requiring the team to step up to and achieve? How would they know that the team coaching engagement is successful? How is the success going to be measured? What's it going to look like, feel like? And then, especially if you are an external coach, you may also want to understand what's been the team development interventions up till now, and what has worked, what's not worked. What you understand of team coaching is an important aspect, just to make sure that they clearly understand what team coaching is all about. And then there could be some boundaries around confidentiality. They may not want some specifics to be discussed with the team, etc. You would like to be aware of it. And if you are one of a challenging mindset, you may also want to ask that, why do you believe that I would make the right team coach? And that's a very important question, because I've seen, especially even in individual coaching engagements, a lot of times people will tell you, no, we want you as a coach because you are an expert in this field, because you bring the finance leadership experience, or you bring business leadership experience, or you are a thoroughbred HR professional. Now that's when you realize that they don't probably understand how it's going to work. And that's really an opportunity for you to correct those expectations, even in team coaching, if something similar happens. Contracting too is when you contract with the team. And I think Das had made this point probably earlier in the conversation, that there are two contractings. There is the contracting which you do with the commissioner. There's the contracting which you do with the team. With the team, you contract on outcomes, on the ways of working. You meet with the entire team. You may have conducted some initial surveys, for example. This is an opportunity to engage the team to, let's say, unlayer those surveys, what comes out of it, have an engagement discussion around it, get the team to agree to what is going to be success, for this team as individuals, as team, and for the organization for which this engagement is being done. And how would the stakeholders look at this engagement? What would be success for them? You may also, this is the time to define that, what is it that they would expect from each other? What is it that they would expect from team, coach? What is it the coach would expect from the team? And again, an opportunity to clarify what is team coaching. Clarify the fact that team coaching is going to be working with the team together and not with any of them individually. And it's also an opportunity to kind of set the tone for the engagement to follow. And that happens when you set practicalities, boundaries, ethics, work alliances, and contract with the wider organization. And primarily that, are you going to be attending as a team coach? Are you going to be attending all the meetings? Possibly not. I'm going to attend one meeting, once a month, which the team has, where I can kind of help you reflect better or think better, or, whatever else be the outcome that you're working on, or engage better. So yes, Archana.
Sorry, can I ask a question at
Yeah,
this time?
sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So when we look at between contracting 1 and contracting 2, this is very helpful, Sandeep and Jaya. This is the practical side of things that we are really talking now. Yeah. Now, I've met a stakeholder. I went to Accenture hypothetically, met the CHRO, and they said, okay, for my direct reports, let's do this team coaching engagement. Now, when you come to contracting 2, when you're with the team and you are asking them, so what is it that they are looking from this intervention? Now, what if there is a difference in opinion of what the stakeholders are looking to achieve with this team coaching journey and what the team is actually looking at? And, for example, just as an example, the team might think they are good on all the 4 or 5 behaviors, or maybe trust is not so good in the team. Yeah. But the stakeholders actually listed 3 other things.
Yes.
What do you do in that case?
And just hold on, Archana. Let me just come towards the end of the slide, and you will have the answer in this very slide. Okay? And that's a very pertinent question, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
So besides the practicalities, you will also set the boundaries in terms of confidentiality, as you do in an individual coaching engagement, saying this is something which is going to be between the coach and the coachee, in this case, the team coach, and also agree to what is it that can go beyond this coaching engagement. Okay? Reinforce the fact that you're not going to be working with them individually. Depends at what level you are operating, but you may also, at least even if you don't announce it to the team, I think it's important for a team coach to understand what's the kind of supervision arrangements they have for themselves. People who work in team coaching space understand how intensive these engagements become. And that's why it's also important that for every meeting, every session, you turn up with your best, and that you can do when you have some kind of a support system available. you have a supervisor with whom you can go and share your challenges and who can help you think better. So, that's an important part of it. Obviously, professional, ethical, code of conduct, another thing is, I think the team has to have the comfort that the coach is not going to play back his assessment of team members. So that's an important point to make in these contracting discussions, that the team coach is not here to pass judgments on individual members. He's not going to be the one who's going to be asked at the time of assessment, how do you feel this person is doing or that person is doing? So I think that's an important part. And then there is the piece of expectation setting. How's this relationship going to work? Maybe, be open. That's what coaching is all about. What are the fears that we have? Why this engagement will not work? Or what do we expect from the engagement? And what do we hope will go okay? So this is an opportunity for that exchange. And now coming to the very valid point which Archana was making, that it's important to align a little bit what the stakeholders want done and what the team wants done. There are a couple of ways to do it. Now, one way to do it is that you conduct a survey of the team and let the results come from the survey, right? So if the team wants to work on 1 or 2 or 3 areas, let the survey, results. So even before you engage on specific goals, conduct a survey, which gives you a little bit of a dipstick on where the team is and what are the 2-3 areas to work on. If stakeholder has given a view of the team, there are 2 ways to handle it. And again, I draw a parallel also with one-to-one coaching. I have seen in so many coaching engagements that the manager concerned is so reluctant to give feedback to the coachee that they want to tell the coach, please work with my subordinate on these 3 coaching goals. And you ask him, have you ever spoken to this person and told him these are the 3 things you need to work on? And, this is a difficult thing to do, but my suggestion would be sometimes in these conversations for individual coaching, get all the players in the same room. I have done this where I get the manager, the coachee, and myself in the room and we agree to coaching goals. So because it is not the coach's job to give feedback. It is coach's job to make sure that the coachee works on that feedback. So that's an important, very important element. And that's what happens here also. The other possibility is you can get the stakeholder into a meeting. The kickoff meeting could be a way in which the stakeholder talks about these are the 3-4 things that you need to work together as a team. Or if the stakeholder tells you that these are the 3 things you need to work on the team, you can tell the stakeholder, let's hold this. I've heard you. Let me conduct an initial survey. Let's see what comes out of that survey. And let's see. And these surveys could be of 2 types. This could be a survey you conduct within the team, or this could be a survey which you conduct more like a 360 degrees of the team. The first survey is how is the team working within? And the second survey is how is the team engaging or working on the objectives set by the larger organization, multiple stakeholders. Does that help, Archana?
Yes, very much. I just need one clarity. So
Yes.
you said that the survey piece, when you said, one is, okay, you're surveying the team.
Yes.
Within the team, the survey is getting rolled out. Another is more like a 360-degree approach where you're going to all the different stakeholders and collecting how they feel. When you do it within the team, Sandeep,
Yes.
pretty much, what are the parameters you're looking at in terms of, is it more on the lines of the, the behaviors of the 5 dysfunctions? It's mostly around those, or the objectives which the stakeholders give you?
So objectives is one part of the engagement. So if it's only about objectives, possibly you don't need a team coach. It's about relationships, as Jaya was mentioning when we opened this conversation. It's about getting the team to work better objectives is an important part, but it's not all that we are looking at. So it could be a dysfunctions of a team kind of a survey. It could be any other survey. For example, there is a 5C survey, which Peter Hawkins has developed. So that could be a survey you could conduct within the team. Also remember that the 360-degree survey that we conduct will be with the larger organization, with team seen as single entity. Yeah, so that's an important point to remember.
Also,
Sure.
Archana, to respond to your question, you're not capturing what do you want from this intervention. You're actually listening to their relationships and their perceptions about each other and the narratives they're telling each other. And especially those narratives that are not shared in common. And that they tell you when you talk to them one-to-one, saying, hey, what's going on? And what do you think about that person or that stakeholder or things like that? So you're largely actually, because survey is simple, right? You create a questionnaire, you float it around, you do analytics. But what you're really trying to capture is the narratives and the relationships here. And as the work of a team coaching or group coaching is, you're actually coaching this space, not individuals. So it is less about what do you want to do. It's more about how do you get along or not get along. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely. So I see 3 hands. Good to have a very engaging session. So let's hear from. I don't remember whose hand was raised first. So please, any of you can get started.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
So, see, in typical 1:1 coaching, the measures of success and the timelines are also sort of available at the first 3-way meeting. We also have the 3-way meeting where the sponsor, the manager, and the coach are together along with the coach, and then the agenda and the expectations are discussed there, right? So the measure of success also is sort of comes out from there, in the sense that how do you know that you're going to be successful?
Yes.
And that's broadly agreed. And also then, okay, close attached to that is the time required for the change, the overall timelines. So how do those factors come in here? Because here you are now collecting the feedback and the expectation from the team, right? That would lead to discussion on what needs to change, and then what kind of measure, how are you going to measure the success once it's done, and then how much time it will take.
Yeah.
Is it part of contracting?
Yeah. Now there are a couple of ways to approach this. First is that, sometimes you may have a kind of an open-ended engagement, saying, okay, you work with the team, you decide what's the time you need to this thing. The other is that you could have a set time, saying you have 6 months to work with this team. Now, what you could do is, the important thing is to engage the team to decide where they want to see themselves at the end of 6 months. So when you have the contracting tool and you discuss the areas that you're going to work on with the team, let's assume you're using a survey. You give the results of the survey, the results come to a certain percentage, right? Let's say out of 10 on a trust, let's say the team has scored 5 and the team decides to work on trust. Now you would agree that at the end of 6 months, we would like to be, our aspiration is to be at 8 or 9. So that's how the success metric is set. You may conduct the same survey at the end of the engagement to see where the team is.
And don't be surprised if things change drastically.
Yeah.
It will.
Team coaching, it's a exponentially different world versus one-to-one coaching. The dynamics and the interrelationships make it so much more complicated and so much more nebulous. It keeps kind of changing with every session.
And sorry, one additional question to this. There will be a single called out role called the team leader, right?
Yes.
Now, when you're taking a survey, now does the leader influence or does the leader drive anything here in this expectation and contracting, or it's democratic completely?
No, team leader has an important role to play. And I think when you run a team coaching engagement, you understand that you are not going to be there on the pitch playing the match. It is the team leader who's going to be playing the match. And I think that is why team leader is important, that while you work on the capabilities of the team, but you also separately work on the capabilities of the team leader. And in some team coaching engagements, possibly the only individual engagement that happens as part of the team coaching framework is with the leader. Yeah. Yes. Purvi, Sanjay, anybody? Yes.
Okay, I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Two questions, Sandeep. One is I'm stepping back and going to step 0 as to the need for a coach. Who's assessing this? The HR organization, of the corporate that you work with, or the supervisors, the lead teams? There is somebody who's come to a conclusion that only a coach can help sort out the challenges that the team is going through. So typically, who is doing that? Whether it is a facilitator or a consultant or a coach, and ruling out all possibilities, they get to a coach who's the right person who can help them with the problem. That's question number 1. Question number 2 is an extension of this. Or is it that once they've identified you as a coach, then are they going to work with you to go back and reassess as to what the real need is? Who's the right resource who can help them solve the problem that they have? And whether that is fully calibrated.
Yeah. Again, no straight answer. Having said that, I think it's very clear. And even if you look at the ICF competencies for team coaching versus individual coaching, team coaching gives you a bit of flexibility to be directive. This is the first time in a ICF competencies I've read the word directive. So I think ICF also understands that team coaching is a slightly different animal. You could be playing the role of a facilitator sometimes, you could be a bit more directive in the practical world. And I won't say that this is exactly as per the ICF code of ethics, but in a practical world, when I do team coaching engagements, some of those team coaching engagements also have intervening sessions for sure of facilitation, but also sometimes of consulting. So it is quite possible, and in team coaching, you may need to wear different hats at different points in time. Most importantly is you have to call out very clearly that today I am your facilitator, today I am consulting you on this challenge. Because the most important thing is neither the team nor you should get confused in your two roles. The more you do that, the more you're going to step on the shoes of the team leader, which is always avoidable. So Sanjay, does this kind of help?
Well, I think it's a very gray area. I'm still not where I should be, but in your experience, have you ever let go the coaching work and started to do mentoring or facilitation with explicitly stating the contract also that this is going to change now? You guys don't need a coach, you guys need a consultant or a facilitator or a mentor.
So, there are a couple of things. One is that if you realize during the coaching engagement that the team needs an expert and you don't have the expertise, I think it's unfair for you to take that challenge. First thing. Second is that if you are either during the engagement or before the engagement, realize that they need you to wear a hat other than that of a coach, it is good to call it at the time of contract. So which means you will be absolutely clear at that point in time that yes, this is a coaching engagement, but for 2 or 3 sessions or whatever you decide to mention there, I will also be playing the role of a consultant. If during the engagement you realize that the intervention needed is different, I think it's again your duty to go back to the, anybody who's kind of being the key stakeholder, whether it's the HR or the manager concerned, to say that I'm going to run an expert session with them, or I'm going to run a short consulting engagement with them. Because you're right, absolutely. There's no way that you would know for sure right in the beginning that this engagement is only going to be a pure play coaching engagement. It's quite possible during the time you discover that something else is required.
And part of the agreement is also to tell them that team coaching is not only coaching. It is
Yes.
combination of other skills, and you will be leveraging whatever is required at whatever point in time. Sanjay, to respond to your question about who takes a call about that they need a team coach is generally HR and L&D. And then you basically start contracting to understand why do they need it. You start talking to the business, and then basically the work of getting everything on the same page stays with the coach, and that's what the contracting journey is about. Before you actually start the work, there is a lot of work in terms of coming to the same page, understanding everybody's meaning of intervention and wanting to intervene or not intervene, and bringing everything together before you even start or create the journey map, if that helps.
Clear. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Sandeep.
Yeah, welcome. Yes, Purvi, and then Mahi.
So one observation and I think a related question here as well. When we're talking about having a contract with the sponsor or whoever the requester is and the actual team that is getting coached, one of the observations that I've had in two of my experiences is that the team sometimes is not clear about what's in it for them. What exactly is the value that they draw out of this? And there have been instances where I have gone back to the requester and the sponsor saying, this is an expectation as, you know, probably their leadership, you need to establish, where they start seeing the value of this team coaching session. So just wanted to validate, you know, one, if this is kind of the way. And the other question is kind of related here, or not sure if it's totally not related. A lot of times, and this has not happened with me personally, but just hearing from other people's experience. Jaya, to your point that a lot of times in a team coaching scenario, we're really coaching the space, the relationship, right? There have been instances where we've talking about, you know, a manager or the requester who has actually brought us to do the coaching, not really having that relationship with the team, where the team does not trust, you know, this lead and this manager. And so they don't trust the, you know, whoever, the coaches here who are really being called the so-called experts to solve for the situation. So how do we really work on that?
So, see, a lot of work is also to create that safe place, that psychological safety we talk about with the team and with the organization. A lot of time, not in the sense the stakeholders. What is seen a lot of time is stakeholder is getting an external coach because now he or she thinks that they can't manage it. So let's outsource my problem. And that's where we have to raise a flag to say, hey, hello, it doesn't work like that, because we need to come to the same. I've also seen a lot of times there are blockages around trust and relationships, which basically create that environment of avoidance, and people are not talking to each other and saying, okay, let's bring extra, like it happens in individual coaching a lot of times. So the first work as a coach when I enter an organization is for me to understand and create relationships. Coaching starts much later. It's actually the third step. But the first step is building that expectations with the team members, talking to them one-to-one, making them safe, also helping them understand that you are here for the team. Right. And that takes some time. Only saying doesn't help. You have to show it in your behavior. You have to show evidences of, them trying to trust you and move forward. And that happens through little experiments that you do on the way. Small incidences of trust, small incidences of forming trust, because I'm not actually just I'm not a messenger who's taking the message from here and delivering here, right? So I have to also push back to the stakeholders at times to say, hello, let's look at it differently. So there is a coaching happening towards the stakeholder, and there is a coaching happening towards the team. And then in all neutrality and non-judgment, how am I bringing all of them together? Because the benefit and the purpose of the organization is higher than anybody here. And that's where we are focusing.
Yeah. And Purvi, let me give another example. And I think that in my mind helps me sort this challenge out for myself at least. You know, what happens in an individual coaching, for example, is that you would have a 360-degree survey. Now, what is the purpose of the 360-degree survey? Actually, in the end, there's only one purpose. What is the perception of the person for themselves, and how do other people see it? Right? And then you get a graph or whatever saying this is where there are differences. This is how you see yourself. This is how others see you, right? And then you try and bridge that gap during the work that you do. Now, similarly, if you are talking of a team, you could do the same survey within the team, and you could do the same survey for the team with external stakeholders. What you will get is the point of differences, and this is objective data then. So saying now, it's not necessary that this is correct or that is correct. The important thing is that we have to come to a common understanding. For example, the team sees themselves as very high on trust or accountability, and the stakeholder sees them as very low on accountability or low on trust. Now, how is it that we are going to make this differences mitigate? So that could be a good way to kind of, you know, make sure that the perception is really the reality. So you may want to try this, you know, if you think it makes sense. Pick up one survey, conduct it for within the team, conduct it externally. Or conduct the same survey and then do two slicing of the results, one of the stakeholders and the other of the team members.
And part of the role of a team coach is also to be doing the hard job of doing those difficult conversations, to say, hey,
Absolutely.
I spoke to your team and this is the perception they hold. What would you like to do about it? And go to the stakeholder and go to the team and saying, hey, this is what your stakeholder is expecting from you, and I understand your story. What would you like to do about it? And then trying to bring everything on the same page before you even start your work. And that's a hard conversation. A lot of people, egos come in, people don't want to listen to it. People don't want to agree to that. And there will be a lot of places where people try to change your perception. No, aisa nahi, it's not like this. You don't understand. There's a context. All that mess happens. And how do you keep yourself sane in that complexity and continue asking thought-provoking questions for them to take a call, and not you taking any call there? And that's the difficult piece here. I see Mahi has been waiting.
Yes, I also see that. So let's just take that, and then there's you know, maybe we at least I close, and then before Jia starts, we can take another couple of questions, and or maybe during Jia's part of it. So, yes, Mahi. Hello.
Mahi, you're on mute.
Yeah, if she's speaking, she's on mute. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
I was asking this question. Can team leader also coach the team using this the team coaching model?
Yes, absolutely they can, but it's a very difficult thing to do.
Okay. So another question to you as well. So what kind of thin line of difference or boundary has to be maintained if the coach is internal, not external, using this approach, using team coaching?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
I was asking that what kind of differentiation or or a kind of a boundary needs to be set if the coach is an internal coach, not the external coach?
What kind of bound? I think it's quite similar, the same boundaries actually. For internal coach, the boundaries would be even, I would say, more stringent, because the internal coach would be interacting with a lot of people within the organization.
Okay, okay.
So, the most important thing is the confidentiality aspect there. That whatever is discussed as part of this coaching engagement with the team doesn't really go outside of the team, except to the agreed stakeholders.
Okay.
Yeah. So that to me is the most important, but I think most of the other in some ways will hold.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so Venkat has a question, but let me also move to the last slide and then take Venkat's question so that then I can wrap up. So there's always opportunity to find more opportunities to contract. So we also contract when we say, what is it that you would like to achieve in this meeting today? Or what do you expect to see at the end of this session today? That's also contracting. Or when we do a quick check-in during a conversation saying, before we move forward, tell us, how are we progressing? Or in the context of outcome that we are working on, either mid-session or mid-engagement, we may have a session to say, okay, how are we doing? And I love this phrase, which is Peter Hawkins, this thing, ABC, always be contracted. The more you contract, the better clarity emerges for yourself and for others in terms of how this engagement is going to progress. So last quick question from Venkat and over to Jaya. Sorry, I've taken obviously more time.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, this I wanted your from real life experience, because typically the team's performance, the team leader is responsible for it, is accountable for it. It reflects on him or her. Right. So whenever you have a tough feedback from external stakeholders, it's quite possible that the team leader may take it personally, right? Or there could be defensive. So 2 questions: how is this handled? Number 2, is the feedback shared with the team completely? Because that may lead to different kind of dynamics in the team. There could be a challenge to the leadership itself, right? So how do you handle it? Because then the coach is in a very tough situation of moderating between these various pulls and pushes.
Yeah. So there are 2 ways to do it. One is that you as a coach share most of these, but I prefer the other way, which means that most of the feedback which has to be shared with the team, you engage with the team leader to share that feedback. So then the equation changes a bit. The team doesn't see as it being a reflection on the leader, but it sees as the leader driving it a little bit, or it's not a reflection then on leadership style in some ways. And I think that's an important part of coaching, team coaching, because you're also trying to increase the competencies, capabilities of the team leader. And every time you put them in a spot, and I'm using this word, in a spot, to kind of engage with the team is an opportunity for them to get better at managing those relationships. So I would be the last person who would like to, as they say, even in coaching, do you want to be the, what do you say? Do you want to be the sage on the stage, or do you want to be the guide on the side? So the team coach is also a guide on the side. He's not a sage on the stage.
Yeah, you have to dodge every opportunity to be on the stage, and people will push you there. The situations will get you to say, hey, you say, you tell, you moderate, but you have to get off the stage every time. You have to dodge it. And that's the difficult part here. Okay.
Okay, so I will stop sharing and then we can.
All right. So I think a lot has been covered. I'll just cover a couple of slides which may just help you put things together. So some of the common practices of any team coach, and again, this forms part of contracting, is number one, be clear about the challenge for the team and the stakeholder expectations. Number two, create a team charter. We call it a journey map. Third, set transformational team key performance areas and indicators like we do our goal setting. Link individual performance to team objectives. There has to be an overlap. I think we all understand that piece. Develop a clear strategic narrative and get everyone to rehearse and communicating it. Create a joint stakeholder strategy. Find opportunities to delegate to joint leadership. You have to ensure and create opportunity to create collective leadership, joint leadership through team coaching, because people should no way look at you as an expert or a magic wand who will, or a magician who can come and change everything. That's not your role, or that's not our role. Avoid being the mediator, referee, or go in between. Strengthen the links between the top team and the key teams at the next level. Set your expectations on what every team member can do. Be honest, transparent about your own strengths and weakness. Invite feedback. Ask the team members to work with you to manage these. Get coaching and support from your own journey from the team manager to team coach. And also, there are a lot of engagements where two coaches work together so that they are able to support each other and able to see what is not obviously visible. This is how a typical coach, team coaching journey looks like. You start with preparation, you do scoping and contracting, and then other processes follow. The conversation today is about how do you prepare. You can do interviews, you're observing throughout, you're doing diagnostic, you can use tools for that, and then you integrate and provide feedback to the environment for them to decide what are the key themes to be worked upon. And as we discussed, scoping and contracting is all about what exactly are we working on and how would we work together, till when we will work on this, and what outcomes are you expecting. So again, what is team coach's role in these two steps? In the preparation, establish what performance means in this context. Establish how ready the team is for coaching. Team's action is to consider willingness and readiness for coaching and why it wants coaching. So they need to understand what is coaching at the first place, experience it a bit, and then really make a call whether they really want to get coached. Most of the cases, nobody says no to that, but then for them to understand what is their role in it is important. Scoping and contracting, the team coach's role is to clarify goals, timelines, how will we measure the outcomes of coaching, map the principal barriers and driver to goal achievement and coaching effectiveness. And team's role is to understand and commit to specific performance goal tasks, learnings, and behaviors in the coaching process. So really, when you're finally sealing the contract, the first big contract, you basically have few things very clearly lined out. What are the goals we're going to work on, and what is the responsibility each one of us are taking. Some of the questions that can support you doing mapping is stakeholder mapping is who in the team do they have strong and weak connections to. These are the information which helps you make your intervention stronger. How do the stakeholder groups connect with each other? What is the relationship? What is the reporting structure? What are the interaction mechanism, frequency, everything? Where do they overlap and conflict in their expectations? So this is the first step you also include in one of your contracting, as to let me understand the map of this organization, or the scope of the team in conversation, right? Who are the stakeholders? How are they connecting to each other? What is the where are the stakes? And then talk about the shared narratives with stakeholders. What is this team here for? What is the purpose of this team? At times it is very straightforward, like finance, very straightforward, technology, very straightforward. But then there are teams where a clear purpose has to be very clarified. At times everybody knows the purpose, but bringing it, revisiting is also important. And that's also part of coaching conversation that you do in one of the workshops. How does this team make life difficult for you, kind of questions, or easy for you, whichever way you want to frame it? Where do you see this team sharing the same values with you, and where do you think you have divergent values? What would make you feel better listened to? So these are some of the questions, and you can design your own questions. Don't restrict to this. These are just sample questions. Can help you understand how does stakeholder think about this team, and then how does team think about the stakeholders. Again, narratives are very important. And then responsibility mapping. How are people responsible? How are people managing their responsibility to themselves? How do they see themselves as part of this team? You know, what is their internal narrative when they think, when they look at themselves as part of this team? How is this team looking at themselves? What is the identity piece? How is the stakeholder looking at this, and how are they looking at their role in the society, in the universe, in, you know, whatever business they are? A lot of times these narratives and these perspectives are totally missing. People are so busy in their transactions, they go beyond their KRAs and their daily responsibilities. So bringing them perspective around how they're contributing to the environment, to the society, to the organization, does a lot of thinking and reflection for them. And the final slide is around, there are different contracts, as we've been talking about. The contract between the coach and the leader, and the contract between the coach and the team, the coach and the sponsor, team member and team member. Both of them also have to contract with each other. And if there are two coaches working on the project, then what is the contract between them? And clearing all these areas helps take the conversation forward. Because a lot of times, not actually, most of the times, the issue is not the issue. The issue is the expectation and the vagueness in the expectation. And that's where contracting plays a role. Does that make sense? Any further questions? Yes, Archana.
Sorry, I have too many questions. It's also exciting.
It's good.
Two questions.
It's good.
You know, we were discussing this earlier with Sandeep. So let's presume you met the stakeholders. Okay, we are all ready. We've understood the expectations. Now you go to the team and you're having your first charter with them. And now you get a pulse that the team is actually not ready for this. Yeah. Now, what Sandeep said earlier, of course, you go, and I would like to presume you're going to go back to the stakeholders and kind of share that in some sense, right? Obviously, because transparency and clarity all is very important. Then as a next step, is it okay that after you've communicated with them and of course hear them out, and now the team comes back, like when we were talking about that survey, the key stakeholders now come back to the team, more like a FGD, like a focus group discussion is happening there. Look, this is why we are doing this. I'm just taking it at a very broad level. And then after this meeting, the team is the needle has moved a little bit. Have those scenarios also happened in whatever experience both of you have? Sandeep and Jaya?
It does happen. I think the most important piece is around creating that receptivity in the individuals to look at this intervention openly. So there are a lot of times your teams will show progress externally, but internally they have not moved. And addressing to those pieces around, you know, trust is the conversation. A lot of teams will show improvement on achieving their goals, but internally the trust is hampered. So how are you doing there?
So, Jaya, my question was more around that once you have met the team, you're not seeing teams so much of willingness to do this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then what is the protocol? And the stakeholders are very clear. We want the team to go through this.
Sorry, I'm just interjecting.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you, what happens in an individual coaching? You've been appointed by a manager to coach a person, and you find that the person is not interested in coaching. What do you do?
So in that case, I've actually experienced this, Sandeep, one when I was managing coaching, one as a coach. So went back to the stakeholders, you know, of course, tried at my level to really understand what's happening at his individual level, but then eventually ended up going to the stakeholders to say, this is how the coachee is feeling, and coaching will not work if this relationship is not seen, you know, as a trusted, and the coachee's willingness is not there. And I think in that case, the organization was not very mature, Sandeep. So I really had to put in a lot of effort to really convince, in some sense, not convince, but tell them that there'll be no value add if we're going to push this. And I think they understood this. And at one time it happened in my organization also, where the senior level person, we made the candidate meet 2-3 different very good coaches. And the coaches in some sense came back and said, the guy is actually not coachable. So in both these instances, we kind of stalled the engagement. We didn't take it forward.
So just 2 reactions to this. One, and again, a practical experience. I had a coach similar, which very, very low on what I call the coachability index. And you won't believe that this engagement was eventually signed only with one objective, which was to improve him on the coachability index.
Okay. Interesting.
And for a minute, just think about it, because how is somebody coachable? Somebody is coachable if he's open to change. And while we may call it coachability index or whatever, but you are changing the propensity of that person to change for better. And that's the engagement. So that's one piece. The second piece in the team coaching context is that let's be very clear. And I think that is where sometimes we falter because we lose sight of that objective. It's not only the stakeholder which has expectations from the team. The team also has expectations from the stakeholders. If you get both of them in the room and you map out expectations in a way that the team understands what stakeholders are expecting, stakeholders understand what the team is expecting, you may be better off at the starting point.
And the inquiry is what is making the team think without experiencing that they don't want coaching. There's something behind that, right? Can you go there? Can you go there and understand, say, hey, what is making you resist this process without even experiencing it? And also at times it involves a bit of selling about the benefits and, going to the overlap of individual success and team success and organization success. All that selling work also happens because you're also trying to sell them the process and say, hey, just experiment like you do in individual, right? You show them the benefit. At the face of it and say, hey, this can help you in your own journey. I remember one very successful leader says, I don't want to work on any of the team development. I don't have time. I'm a salesperson. I chase number. That's it. That's all for me. And I said, okay, what if this process helps you become better? Would you like to try? And after thinking, she says that, yeah, then I can try only if it helps me and an individual. So how do you respond to somebody like that? Because she says, I'm a salesperson, man. I just talk numbers. Don't talk to me all this. I mean, sales happening, team is happening, nothing else. I cut the crap. That's how she talked. And then I had to sell her personal development. And let's be honest, that's our work. That's our work, to create receptivity in people to try the process. And I told her, I said, you discard this process if this doesn't benefit you. 2 months, experiment. If it doesn't work, discard. Same thing we do with teams. Because they're saying no to something that they have not experimented. So what is the reason for that? Right? For me, clearly there is either they don't feel safe or they don't trust the process.
Thank you both. Just one very quick one, and you can answer that later. We can take other questions. I can come in the end. I'm okay. Let others also take but I want to ask this question, but before we leave the session today, that's more at a generic level. But I'll have others say it now. I'll wait.
Okay, Venkat, what's your question?
Yeah, this is related to the earlier conversation. See, this is fascinating. Managing a team or addressing a team development is fascinating. In 1:1 coaching, more or less, it is very clear that we do not accept any performance improvement kind of a situation. Like if it is not a talent, it is not a growth kind of an agenda. There could be difficulty on the job. That is different. But if the person is, the organization is trying to look at the person, manage him out, we won't touch it. But what I hear from these sessions is that when you go to a team, it's quite possible that indirectly these performance issues might come in the sense that therefore there's a skill deficit. And as you are analyzing the stuff, you find that there's a clear skill deficit, and that needs that the current person who's handling that particular skill is changed or a new thing is found on. How do you handle these kind of things which will pop up, once in a while? So is there a way to say that, okay, I'll continue to work with the coach says that, fine, this is a team given to me. I only address this team. I'm not going to change the membership of a team or whatever. Even that suggestions, I'm not going to bring it up to the leader, right? Maybe I can raise the awareness and leave it like that.
Yeah.
But if you raise the awareness and leave it like that, the action may not happen, and maybe you will not achieve the objective. So how do you handle this kind of?
So when you are doing the interviews and observation, things are becoming clear and clear for you, right? So you're segregating, saying behavioral improvement, skill improvement, or something else. And at that time, you're doing the contracting with the organization. I'm going to work on the behaviors. Meanwhile, you figure out what you want to do with the skills. And you give it back to them to work on it, definitely.
Okay.
Because the whole idea of team coaching is to coach the relationship and the space between, and not individuals. So I'm working on awareness and for people to come together, collectively move on the purpose versus anything else. And obviously to ensure action is my work on those areas. Sandeep, would you like to add anything?
First is that it is not for me to decide that whether a person or a member of a team needs to be changed or not. That's a call that the team leader has to take very clearly. Second is, I think we as team coaches need to appreciate that the dice can never be loaded in our favor always. We have to play the game with the players we get, as simple as that. The liberty to change the players is not mine. One thing which, as Jaya was mentioning, and I think it's important to create the right kind of psychological safety, you call it, or make the team more functional, that they are able to share with each other their mutual expectations as well. And, how can that, because a team coaching engagement, or let's say the way that a high performing team works, is that they also support each other when it's required. So if there is somebody who's not performing, etc., one has to, through the team leader or through conversations, understand what is the kind of support that is required for this person to become better. I don't think I can take that liberty of saying that, okay, let's change this member and move on. It's going to be very difficult for me to do that. I think it will be a breach of ethics, let's put it this way. The way the team coaching engagement.
My question is not that the coach will recommend, but if those issues start boiling up through a natural awareness process, right? Then that will be elephant in the room and to be addressed by the team leader. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. And I think you as coach need to ensure that the elephant in the room is addressed. It doesn't need to be addressed by you, but it's your job to ensure that it's addressed. So let's put it this.
So my point was, this will be more, these things are more possible in team coaching than one-on-one is much easier.
It is.
For a coach. Yeah.
So definitely this process is much more complex. You can involve so many people and stakeholder and dynamics and culture. So many things come into play. Yes, Sanjay.
Yeah.
Again, I go back to the basic need of getting the coach for team coaching. The impact of all these behaviors, relationship, trust is eventually going to happen on business results, whichever way you cut the cake. Now, hardwiring that to specific behaviors and then putting such kind of KPIs or KPAs in a contract, how do you do this? Because there is a couple of things that come to my mind. One is hardwiring it. The other is there will always be a lag between the time the trust and relationship improves to the reflection of those actions on results. So the assessment of a coach, whether he or she has met the success criteria and what those criteria should be, and in tangible forms versus intangible, such as trust and relationships. how does it all happen in the real world? So I'm still struggling with it.
Okay, you want me to go first? Yeah.
Sure.
I will again like to draw a parallel. You know, the answers are in front of us. What happens in an individual coaching engagement? You work on behaviors. Exactly. You work on behaviors, and you are confident, the organization is confident that the behaviors are going to in some ways positively impact the business results or the business objectives or that person's individual objectives, right? And there is a lag. So because it's not immediately that the person will start seeing the results. Same is the case with team coaching. And I think it is important, that's where contracting comes in place. I think where the team coach actually clarifies it to the organization and the stakeholders what this engagement is all about. And you cannot wish away from the fact that, you know, business objectives is something which has to be part of this engagement. It's one of the things that the team works on, and probably the most important. So the fact remains that if the business objectives is the sole purpose, and if we believe that the behaviors have no impact whatsoever on business objectives, why even get a team coach? In that case, the organization should not spend that money, make that investment at all. Now, let me take a simple example to clarify my thoughts on this. For example, the team is working on a particular business objective. So you have to, as a team coach, take the liberty of breaking that business objective into what are the actionables required on each of the behaviors which will help them become better at achieving those business objectives, and get them to agree as a team collectively that we will practice these behaviors. It seems straightforward, you know, and I know we can all look at it with a bit of suspect, but that's the only way to do it.
So part of, just to add to that, part of it is also to themize the whole thing. So looking at the pattern. So what this team needs to really work on: accountability, assertiveness, and conflict management, let's say. And then we try to support the team to raise awareness on their individual barriers to do that. Because in these team scenarios, generally we go by themes. After doing all the analysis, we come to the themes and then chart out behaviors and say, okay, I'm not saying each and every individual change, but at the group level, at the group dynamics, what needs to change? Let's say more accountability. This team needs to hold more accountability. And then we work on that. Okay, what are the individual challenges to accountability? Let's go there. Because what is happening right now is not an individual manifestation. It's actually a group manifestation. Somewhere the ball is dropping. And how do we address that? Does that
and if you really want to put it in a business language, you could also do it this way. You could say that, okay, we are achieving 100 in terms of business results. We want to be at 120. Now, what is it that we as a team need to do? What are the behaviors we as a team need to work on, you know, and then that could be the starting point of the discussion. And also that could be the starting point to agree to what are the coaching conversations or coaching goals that we are going to have as part of this engagement. Because in that case, it's come from the team. They themselves are saying that these are the things that we need to work on to get better business results.
And so far, the engagements that we receive, there's already some diagnostic has taken place, and we are given the themes to start working on. Okay. You know, there are 40 people, 10 people need to work on assertiveness, 10 need to work on accountability, 10 need to work on this. Can you do something? So then it becomes a more group coaching conversation. And how do you bring a common, awareness through the common session for all of them to start working on it? This is what is happening on the real ground so far. Dasapa, you want to say something?
See, two things.
Yes,
one is, Sandeep, to your point, what do you do with individual? I think the challenge is even bigger, because in a team coaching, you're addressing a team of people.
Yeah.
supposedly cohesive team, but you need to hone some of the skills that they have in terms of the thinking process. But in an individual coaching, it becomes that much more difficult because what kind of cascading effect of that thinking has gone to the rest of the organization, which is supposed to deliver results, it will be even more challenging to hardwire the outcomes to the softer part of it. But all these things around assertiveness or trust, all these are so abstract. So when it comes to what goes in the contract as to what are the deliverables, I understand the themes. Now, how do I measure assertiveness or anything, trust or relationship? One way typically organization do is a OCS review, OCS survey that they do, organization survey. They get some results and look at what is coming out, and then each of them you start to work on it. But what are the other things that you would have to do? OCS survey is actually going to happen once in a while. So the gestation period may be too long, and there are far too many variables which is going to impact. So I'm still struggling. How do you measure these abstracts that we are trying to work on and doing the right things for improving the final outcome, which is actually what is required by the corporation or the client? So in typical contracts, what do you put in there? Do you put in some kind of top line, bottom line, or those kind of objective numbers? Or you simply say, okay, I'm going to put so many sessions, and after each session, whether satisfied, not satisfied, we can have a discussion with the coach, with the coachee, or a cyclical discussion that you have with the client, HR, or the other organization supervisor, who's going to give you an indication this is going in the right direction or not, or all of what I said. So if contracting, the commercial part is directly linked to this, I guess, because why should somebody pay you at all? It has to be.
Absolutely. So one way to do this is that, and there are a lot of team coaching engagements that start where there is no coaching goal per se. In the sense it's not identified, at least when you are signing off. So contracting beyond the commercial agreement actually becomes part of the engagement itself. So in that case, as Jaya was touched upon it, you kind of contract on a coaching journey, which means over the 6 months, I would, for example, conduct some surveys. I will see what comes out of those surveys. We will conduct a facilitation session, let's say, of the stakeholders, the team members, and let's say some of the, whatever, HR fraternity or whoever other people are involved. And from there, the coaching goals will be agreed. Because then you will have a buy-in of the stakeholders of the team and whoever is participating, and you can run a facilitation process that whatever comes out of that meeting is owned by everybody in that room.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a way, so which means you lay out a coaching journey over the 6 months. And then you build the coaching goals. So you can say that our coaching goals will emerge by the 2nd month, by the end of the 2nd month, let's say. So that could be one way to do it. And there have been engagements like those as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar like in individual coaching. Sometimes, a lot of times I've been taken as a coach just to provide a support to a leader. They say, you decide with the leader what you want to work on.
Yeah. It's mostly about, changing the flavor of the team versus the tangibility, because tangibility gets impacted by so many other factors. And when they're hiring a coach, they're saying, hey, we don't know what exactly they need to work on. Can you figure that out and help them? And that has been the conversation so far.
Yeah.
And actually, I must say that running a facilitation session with the stakeholders and the team in the same room to set the expectations of the coaching engagement is a great way forward.
Yeah.
And we see the organizations are very open now. It's no more about so much of, confidentiality that we cannot speak in front of them or they cannot. It's more about people are very open to talk about, their teams are very open to talk about what doesn't work with me and what doesn't work with the organization. there's a fair amount of openness in at least the organizations we have interacted with, and it seems like everybody wants to come on the same page but don't know how, and that's the facilitation all about.
Yep. Thank you.
Add something?
Archana's last question, which she kind of held back.
Yeah, no, this is to Sanjay's thing. This is very interesting what he spoke about and what was coming to my mind. Sanjay, just sharing a perspective. What I understood of your question largely at a broader level, a sense was in some way looking at the ROI on the softer aspects. That's what
Correct.
I understood it as, right? When Jaya spoke about tangibility.
Correct.
Now, what I have experienced sometimes, I had not done team coaching at that time, but as Sandeep and Jaya say, a lot of it is some bit of a facilitation work as well. We went and did it for the HR. My HR leader did it for the entire direct reportees, 15, and very senior people, mixed lot. Now, the one big difference that made was initially everybody started with a very politically correct approach in the room. Okay, it was a full day intervention. We did 5 dysfunctions though, but it had a very lasting impact in terms of over the next few months in terms of how people opened up to the leader. He was only connected with a very few, and the others would have this wall in terms of going back to him. So the point I'm driving is sometimes in the experience, what I have seen is team coaching, you call it whatever, these group things coming together. Sometimes it's not too much of a, what do you say, you can't really calculate that result, but 1 or 2 behaviors have an overall arching impact on the whole team that sets the motion for the team to at least start looking in the same direction. I think I have seen that also sometimes with initiatives like this. But I liked your question, Sanjay, very, very distinct. And very quickly, Sandeep, my last question to both of you. It might be a stupid question, but I want to ask this. Now, in India, I'm not going to talk about the Western world. You obviously, both of you have done a lot of work with clients on this. At a very average level, when you took us through these slides, it's very well thought through, very processed, like it all. When you meet your stakeholders and when the need for team coaching comes, how well informed are these organizations in terms of what exactly is team coaching? You know what I'm saying? And I'm not talking, I would want to believe that in the brands, maybe the HR teams know it or the critical stakeholders. I just wanted a little, how well informed are the teams on the other side?
My impression on a scale of 1 to 10, somewhere around 3.
See, team coaching right now is at the same place where individual coaching was 10 years back. And it doesn't mean that it will take 10 years to reach there, because now things are expediting, like I don't know what speed, but that's where it is right now. So there is our piece around education is also important. So when I know exactly what team coaching is, I can have a better conversation with the organizations to educate them about the benefits it brings. And it obviously will take some time to reach a place where, and surprisingly, right, we are also very new to this field and we are already doing assignments. Say something.
Yeah, and let's also understand that the competencies for team coaching by ICF have also been announced just a year ago?
Yeah.
So until then, nobody had, let's say, one understanding of what it meant to be the team coach, because everybody had their own kind of models or whatever frameworks, etc. And so I think and this contracting is all about actually helping them understand what team coaching is going to be about.
See, one thought, when it comes to coaching itself in the Indian context, I don't think so. The businesses are as evolved on the value of what coaching is going to provide. And therefore, it's going to take a little time. So it's in a very nascent stage.
Yep.
But when it comes to group coaching, the first thing that hits somebody's mind is, in a business environment, are these sports coaches? Because that's the figure which comes in front of these people or in front of me as well. What kind of support do they provide? Now that does not limit only to the power of asking questions and deep listening. it goes much beyond that, because it is also building the technical skills of individuals. Now, and cricket, of course, is very popular in this country. So nowadays you have a bowling expert, a batting expert, a fielding expert, and so on and so forth. Earlier, there was one coach, and who was all rolled into one. So what they would look towards the coaches, and this is the first thought that comes to my mind, is that he or she should be fully equipped, technically or otherwise, to help my team get to the end objective of, again, it goes back to the business results versus the key software elements. With most of the organizations that I have worked for, I mean, that's the mentality that I felt, and I don't think so it's dramatically different across. Like maybe maturing a little, taking some baby steps in that direction. But coaching itself is taking baby steps. So team coaching is even more challenging.
Absolutely.
But what is interesting and very intriguing to notice is that there is at least a curiosity to experiment, which basically, again, we may not deliver a pure team coaching engagement, but we're delivering 10, 20, 30% of what we know. And that makes it interesting because we are learning that, they can take intervention up to their awareness.
Correct.
And how do I leverage that? Same work for individual coaching. We all know the awareness level is the same.
I think we also, as coaches, also become better with each of these engagements. I think we also, today, because we've done some engagements, we can talk about it. We can talk some of the practical nuances. We can talk about how to convince an organization to kind of invest in this, how to take these conversations forward. But this is not something the way we started. I think all of us, get there by doing, honestly. So, with every engagement, you become better at it in some ways. You learn how to kind of find your way around in a positive manner.
Absolutely.
Okay, last question from Venkat, and then we'll say bye to everyone.
Yeah. So my question is, like in the virtual world of today, because of pandemic, etc. I mean, does there are big barriers to team coaching now? Because even 1:1 coaching, some of the clients are now asking me to come back and have face to face. So it must be more complex now in team coaching.
It is. It is.
Have you tried and have you done any virtual thing or not at all in the team space?
In pandemic, we have only done virtual, Venkat.
Does it work?
It works. It works. We have to just, I think, accept that it works. There are so many tools to use that can help you, Mentimeter or Mural, and there are so many tools that we have to adapt to, which brings the change. Idea is, can you make the person stop and make them think? Can you make the team stop and make them think? Then it doesn't matter whether it is online or face-to-face.
And I'm a little bit of a, let's say I have a slightly, I won't say difference of opinion, but my preference for team coaching is physical face-to-face engagement.
Yeah, so that's ideal.
Yeah. So except for an engagement which continued because it started pre-pandemic, then we kind of put it on the back burner for a while, and then it again restarted once the first wave ebbed. So that's an engagement I continued with. So for me, I like the vibrancy of engaging with people in the room rather than doing this thing, but each to ourselves. On the other hand, in individual coaching, I would say COVID, the pandemic, for all that the havoc that it's created for coaching, it's been fantastic. For coaches, it's been fantastic. Earlier you were limited to the NCR because everybody wanted a physical session. Now the entire country is open to you. The entire world is open to you. I've taken engagements outside, which was not happening, senior leadership engagements outside of India, which has begun to happen just because people understand. Second is how productive we've become. If I'm in Noida, I had to have a session in Gurgaon, I would waste my entire day. Yeah. Now that 1.5 hour session is end-to-end 2 hours at the most.
But I said, now people are expecting you to come back to office. Because I met one client last week.
Having said that, I think 99%, I'm fairly confident that no engagement will go to 100% face-to-face.
It'll be a combination.
We'll have probably 2 sessions, pehla session hai, let's do face-to-face. Uske baad wo phir you'll come
Yeah,
to a hybrid kind of a model.
Yeah, over 6 months, we'll have a combination of both. But it's important to meet them face to face at least 2-3 times.
Awesome conversation. Thank you for.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Bye.
much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
Very,
you.
very engaging. Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandeep.
Thank you so much. Bye. Bye.
Bye.